This is Brandy Brimhall again, and I am back with another commonly asked question that's submitted to the Chiropractic Compliance Solutions and ChiroCode Help Desk. And the question that's commonly coming in is, what's my benefit for implementing compliance? So the practices that are submitting this are basically just considering implementing compliance, don't necessarily understand all that it entails, but know it's something that should be of interest to them. And so they're just asking, what's really in it for me? If we invest our time and energy into implementing compliance, what are our benefits in the practice for making the steps or taking the steps to do this? So with this commonly asked question, I'm going to give you a few, but certainly not all of the bullet points that are benefits to you for implementing compliance. And the first thing is that guidelines say that a well-established and adhered to compliance plan will be considered in the event of an investigation, which means it could work in your favor in the event that there's an investigation showing that your practice is making a good faith effort to comply with those guidelines, which means you possibly could have a reduction in penalties for any of those penalties that are assessed to you. Because there are so many types of penalties that can be assessed to a practice, because there are so many types of investigations and rules and policies in place, making sure that you have a compliance plan in place helps you to address all of those that are pertinent to your practice, which can definitely significantly reduce penalties. Also, in some types of investigations, your written compliance plan can distinguish the difference between fraud and abuse. And of course, with billing and coding, there are a lot of investigations taking place now and will continue to take place regarding fraud and abuse in coding and billing to third-party payers. So a compliance plan may often be the deciding factor for an investigator in determining if a practice was committing fraud or if a practice was abusing the coding and billing guidelines, which makes a big difference when it comes to penalties being assessed to a practice and determining whether or not an instance was fraud or abuse. So major difference there for practices, which can be a real lifesaver in the event of that type of investigation. So moving on with some other benefits, a compliance plan also provides fundamentals and structure to your practice. And just like with any structure or any business, you can build a lot more sound and solid structure on top of a sound and solid foundation. So the compliance plan is really part of the foundation of your practice and really allows you to make sure that all of those systems and procedures and policies that should be in place are in place in order to have a healthy and strong business. The compliance plan also provides guidance to your workforce, which helps to avoid assumptions and mistakes and errors that can happen, that so often and easily happen, that can be avoided. So this identifies your expectations and avoids risks of things that happen all the time, that we hear about all the time from practices saying, well, I thought she knew to do this, and what I meant when I told them this was something different, or I thought he was doing that. Your compliance plan outlines exactly what's happening, why, who's responsible for it, and all of the details for those things, so that these types of mistakes and errors that come from a lack of communication or miscommunication or assumptions aren't made, or they're prevented largely. So this is a major lifesaver for practices as well, just in general day-to-day operations, not to mention prevention of penalties and things along those lines. There are some other benefits to you as well that I want to point out. One of these, it serves as a significant risk management for your practice. So a compliance plan does help for you to manage and monitor risk, and also keeping that risk at a minimal level, because you are able to prevent a lot of errors and find and fix things before they become large and long-term significant errors. This also helps to protect your practice revenues, the cash flow, and your savings. And from the patient side, it also helps to protect patients from vulnerability such as identity theft, medical identity theft, erroneous billing, misinformation in diagnosis and on claim forms, and lots of other related things like that. Now, because we've discussed many of the benefits, I thought it would be appropriate to review a few of the risks with you. And again, there are many risks also for being non-compliant and not having a documented compliance plan in place, but a few of those highlighted here for you include: without a compliance plan, there is no way for you to manage or minimize the effects of an incident should something happen in your office. So even the smallest incident that could occur could become very expensive, time-consuming, stressful, and costly in a lot of ways to your practice that could be minimized or prevented altogether with a compliance plan. Without a compliance plan, there's also no way to appropriately enforce sanctions upon workforce members if documented guidance isn't provided. So this is where workforce members a lot of times assume the rules or make up their own rules just because the guidance isn't in place for them and there is no documented policy and procedure. Just like as you're always told when you're documenting your patient notes, if it's not documented, it didn't happen. The same thing applies to your compliance plan. If it's not documented, it can only be assumed, and if it's not documented, it probably didn't happen. There's also a greater risk of audit and other types of investigations, such as HIPAA and the OIG, which results in recoupment, fines, and penalties, which can all be crippling to a practice, all because of non-compliance. So it's definitely much easier, much more efficient, and much less time consuming to implement a compliance program now than it is to have to deal with the effects of not having one implemented later on and finding yourself in some level of investigation. Moving forward, compliance implementation can be efficiently managed, and this is a concern for a lot of practices. A lot of offices say, we're a small practice, we don't have a lot of extra time, or we don't have a lot of extra people, so how on earth can we take something on of this magnitude and get it into place when we really don't understand what it all entails? So I have a solution for you here, and if you visit compliantchiro.com and just go to the online compliance training link, there's some more information for you there that I'm not going to get into on this particular response. I'll just send you to the website for that information, and you can submit any questions directly to them for that. But otherwise, I want to give you just a brief review of what this does include to help you understand how any size of practice can implement compliance. With this program, there are short listen and learn lessons that are really about 15 to 20 minutes long or so that you'll listen to, and can be, because they're short, you can listen to them in between patients or over lunch, and it's not blocking an hour or 2 hours out of your time to just listen to some information. But each of these lessons comes complete with the appropriate and editable policy and other necessary documents as they pertain to that lesson. There's also action steps shared with you at the end of each lesson that's telling you these are the 2 or 3 things that you need to do for your practice now as it pertains to this lesson. So it gives you some additional guidance and steps. There's also help desk support, so you aren't alone in the process. If you have a question or something comes up that doesn't make sense to you or that your office is facing, because you're an online compliance training member, you can submit your questions to the help desk support, and someone will be able to respond to you and help guide you through that next process. So implementation can be easily time managed regardless of your practice size, just because of the way this compliance training was built. And the last feature here that I wanted to share with you on this help desk response regarding the online compliance training is that there isn't a contract. This concludes our help desk response for this particular commonly asked question, so I hope the information provided has been helpful.